Hello, AMT Lab listeners, and welcome to a special episode brought to you by the Arts Management and Technology Lab. My name is Angela Johnson, and I'm the podcast producer. In this episode, AMT Lab guest contributors Carol Niedringhaus and Katie Winter provide reviews, analysis, and a comparison of VR experiences using Google Cardboard and Mozilla Hubs. Hope you enjoy!
Katie, why don't you get us started and tell us a little bit about Google Cardboard?
I'm really interested in how more arts organizations can kind of implement these Google Arts and Culture tours into their normal operations. When I was at Carleton University, our art gallery had the opportunity to go into Google Arts and Cultures and create a space there. And it was always an interest of ours to create a virtual space. It just never happened, at least while I was there, especially with COVID happening my senior year. But I've always kind of had an interest in that. So I decided to do my review on Google Arts and Culture and how it utilizes Google Cardboard. I bought Google Cardboard. I have it here with me. I know y'all can't see it, but I have it here with me to do like an in-person. I got the product in my hands, review of it. And, overall the consensus is that it is cardboard. That's what it is.
It's just a piece of cardboard.
Yes. So there's, a lot of different hot takes on this, which we will definitely dive into.
Yeah, so I decided to do Mozilla Hubs. I have my own personal experience with Mozilla Hubs. So it was really fun to look at a lot of these reviews from people who actually know about tech because their experiences with it and their take on it is very different. So yes, do you want to give like a little bit of background on kind of how your product came to be, what it's supposed to be used for, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So Google Cardboard was released in around 2014. And at the time, it was just Google's attempt to kind of get in on the virtual headset. They also kind of were aware, though, that this was a more beginner headset. And a lot of reviews definitely acknowledge that. This was something that Google Arts and Culture just released to kind of get in the VR space. It was meant to use with the phone. It wasn't a full-on VR headset. And to be honest, I think it serves its purpose. It's a great way for people to buy a headset, get involved with it, and just try it out. A lot of reviews and a lot of people argue that this is definitely meant for kids more so than it is for adults. However, I still think that the overall target audience can be for anyone who's interested in just trying it out. I think that it was great to get started with it, play around with VR, and be introduced to it, especially someone who came from a more arts background with not a lot of technology. I really enjoyed just playing with it and getting introduced to Google Arts and Culture through it. And I think a lot of parents who are buying this for their kids or their kids want it, or even teachers also are kind of the target audience in that, sense that they can also go to the museum too through Google Arts and Culture. It's not just the kids. It really is an awesome opportunity for adults too to go on tours. Now even Google has introduced tours of national parks that I would check those out.
I played around with it too. And yeah, some of the national parks that you can go into, gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
Absolutely. And that's what my specific experience with it was. I did the tour of the Temple of Borobudur, and it was this really neat thing. It was actually, it kind of broke my expectations of Google Cardboard because I kind of expected to go into it with this museum, that I was going to walk into a museum, I was going to see paintings on the wall, that was going to be it. And there is a lot of opinions on that. A lot of people had said some negative things about Google Arts and Culture and the fact that, these Google Cardboard tours are simply, you walk in, you see the stuff on the wall, you can't zoom in and out. You can't always choose your route. But I thought the tour of Borobudur was actually really neat in that you climb up the temple. You still are kind of limited to, their route that they take you up. But as you kind of navigate up through the temple, you do go up higher and higher onto each level of the temple. And so at the top, you are at the top and you can kind of see the surrounding area. And honestly, for someone who's afraid of heights, I did feel like it really kind of felt real. The headset in itself has some issues, but otherwise, I still thought the experience was a really neat way to just get into the VR kind of realm of things. And I think Google Cardboard served its purpose for that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I found it uncomfortable, but also it's something that I might want to play with in the future just because it was really cool. And there's so many Google Arts and Culture things that you can do in there, which is really, really cool. I know that you did the temple tour. Did you explore any of the other things that were in Google Arts and Culture while you were playing with it?
Yeah, so I do have some kind of cons there, and I'm going to talk about the accessibility feature here. Whenever you go into the app, and one specific critic of Google Arts and Cultures brought this up too, is that it's hard to get oriented to.
Mm.
When you order them, first off, Google actually discontinued selling them themselves. So about 19 days ago, actually, as of March 22nd, so they discontinued beginning of March of 2021, you have to buy it from kind of a third party. So you're buying it from a third party. So you're not really getting instructions for the headset. They kind of come by themselves. They have a little kind of QR code on the bottom that you can scan and view the profile of it. But otherwise, it doesn't really come with like any sort of like rigid instructions, like, oh, download the app. Here's how to do it. Here's how to open it, put it on. You are kind of left to do that on yourself, which obviously it's technology. You should be able to use Google if you're buying it. But I think at the same point now, as the audience for these goggles becomes more younger generations, they're being incorporated into more classrooms. I think there's still an accessibility issue at that, and the sense of like when you download the app to actually putting the glasses on and using them, there's a gap there. So for me, when I first went onto the app, they have like a test thing that you can put the headset on and test it. And it's supposed to be some sort of like 2-dimensional animated like landscape. And for me, that one just did not work.
I never got it to work either. It was like flicking through a bunch of images. It was very strange.
Yeah. So already at that point, I'm like, oh, I'm not using this right. There's an issue here. And that was just the tester one. So then I spent another like 10 minutes on Google making sure I had it set up right, making sure I could do it. And then there's also the issue that when you go onto some of these tours, you are limited in what you can do in them. So then you're kind of wondering, why can't I go that direction? Am I doing this right? Am I on the right tour? Is this the wrong tour? And then the accessibility issue there that one critic brought up is that you can't zoom in on stuff. Google allows you in some tours, if whoever created that tour adds it, you can go up to paintings and maybe look at the information there if there's an information template that you can kind of hover over. But otherwise, you can't really zoom in. So there is that kind of accessibility issue. If you are someone who is hard of sight, sight impaired, you're not able to zoom in. So the text only gets so big. Especially with the headset on, you can't really access your phone. So you can't like zoom in on your phone screen as well. And then there's the issue of the double vision thing too, which I don't know.
Oh man.
Did you felt that as well?
I did. It was so blurry. You couldn't focus on anything at all.
Yes, that was such a thing. And, after the fact, I researched it and there were so many articles that came up about this concept called IPR, which is interpupillary distance. So everyone, I guess, has different distance between each of their pupils, which is how you go about seeing the world and how your pupils kind of see one image and, focuses on that thing and it translates into your brain. But whenever you kind of put your phone into the app, there's no changing the range of the image you're seeing on your screen. So a lot of people brought up the fact that there's no way to change that. So if you're someone with a more narrow set of eyes, you're someone with a wide set of eyes, even the difference between most males and most females, their set of eyes are different spaced, and the fact that Google Arts and Culture and Google Cardboard more specifically isn't always set up to handle that. So because of that, with varying phone screens even, you might have a smaller iPhone that fits in there, you might have a bigger iPhone that fits in there. So the distance between those images that they're projecting are going to be different in almost every scenario. So there's no perfect way to view it for the most part. So everyone's going to have some level of that kind of double vision almost to a degree. And some people go in there and experience nothing. Some people said, no, I don't see it, or maybe some people said, yeah, it's really limited at first, but then once I'm on it, I get used to it. But unfortunately, because of the nature of the fact that it's cardboard, it's not kind of integrated into the phone. You just kind of slip your phone right in there. There are some of those issues to it.
Yeah, definitely. That's really interesting because I didn't know about that concept, and that totally makes sense. I mean, nobody has the same shape face, so if you're trying to make a one size fits all VR kind of experience, then yeah, you're going to get that weird double vision video quality. And it's on a phone. You're not like looking at it from something super, super high quality,
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is so many critics have came and said, listen, at the end of the day, this is something that's great for teachers to use, right? It's a great tool for teachers to bring into the classroom and introduce this concept to students. That's at the end of the day, the best served purpose for it is just to introduce people to the technology. If you want a more clear, accurate, engaging VR experience, then you're going to need to update to, a nicer headset that, has the screen inside. It's going to format to your face. It's going to fit your eyes better. Or at Google Cardboard is simply a cardboard box. You slip your phone in. Everyone has, I have cracks on my screen, so I was really able to see that too in the tours. So at the end of the day, it does what it's intended to do. Not in the best way, but it is something neat that if I was a teacher and educator, I would probably bring one or two sets of these in. I mean, in a COVID-free world, and allow students to test them out, try it out, see it, and introduce the concept.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. I think that really kind of covers the pros and cons of that non-technology technology, which that's kind of how I've been describing it to myself.
Do you want to dive into Mozilla Hubs on that same note?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, in its essence, Mozilla Hubs is basically, it's just a social VR app that was started in 2018. Mozilla just wanted to dip its toes in there while VR is kind of becoming more and more popular in the market. And it's specifically described as a web XR social app. So it's like a mixed reality rather than specifically a VR or augmented reality. And I think that's because you don't have to have it on a VR headset. You can use it on your phone, you can use it on your laptop or desktop, you can use it on basically any device. So this thing that I kind of kept coming across is this idea of a global metaverse. And this is important because this is really like Mozilla's, they called it in one of the articles a master plan. I know it sounded like super nefarious, but it's really just this idea of creating what is called a metaverse. So I had to go look it up because I had no idea what that meant. And so I found this Forbes article by Kathy Hackle, and as a definition, the metaverse is an alternate digital reality where people work, play, and socialize. Basically, another quote, it's a future interpretation of the internet made up of persistent, shared 3D virtual spaces linked into a perceived virtual universe. So think Ready Player One. You can just kind of log in, you have access to buying products. I think she had an example where it's like, oh, your spouse goes to the store and they forget what to get, and you can like link into the metaverse and send them what type of product they need to get in like a visual way. Yeah, it's a cool concept.
Very fascinating.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to like wrap your head around, but the argument here is that it's coming very quickly, and it's going to have a lot of implications for our society moving forward in things like economics, culture, retail, entertainment, because people are going to be able to interact with brands in a visual way rather than just like Twitter or Instagram or Facebook posts, which while they can be personal are still there. You're not interacting with a human. And so Mozilla Hubs wants to be a major player here.
This is very interesting. I almost wish that was integrated into Mozilla's Hub like homepage or something, or you could click on a little button to kind of learn more about it, because it's making more sense now.
Yeah, because you go into Mozilla Hubs and it seems like it's just like another virtual platform to just like Zoom, like we're doing this, on Zoom, and it seems like it's just trying to be like a more complicated Zoom, but that's not really the idea. And along those lines, actually, they launched a Hubs Cloud version back in April of 2020, and it is really the first open web-based metaverse. So basically what that means is that they are creating this decentralized system where you can pay to basically host the foundation of their platform and run it on your own company's servers and have your own private domain, be able to do a lot more customization, which is really interesting. And it brought up this idea of the whole like decentralization of the metaverse, which is almost a whole other podcast in and of itself. It is basically that Mozilla doesn't want to control it. Whereas, we're having all these conversations right now about how like Google and Facebook kind of have this monopoly on the internet, and how, now that we know that the internet has such influence, government back in the 90s would have been more interested in controlling it. So this Hubs developer, his name is Greg Fodor, said in an interview that for them, that decentralization is really important, because anyone who owns this metaverse will have incredible global influence. And so it shouldn't be in the hands of just one developer. So that's kind of what Hubs is looking to be. It's just a platform.
Wow. I was going to say, I did not realize there was such another kind of deeper level to Mozilla Hubs. When I used it, I immediately got frustrated by it. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense to me.
Yes.
This is just another Zoom, another Hangout spot. I probably won't use this again. But now that you're explaining this, it does seem to make sense why they even created it in the first place. It has a lot more of a deeper purpose, at least to me now.
It does. It has a much deeper purpose. And just if you're talking just straight up functionality of having like a Hubs Cloud, which is paid for, you have to pay for that service, obviously. but you have the foundation of the server so that you can operate your own virtual spaces. You can customize it. They can write their own code. And actually, they want it to be open source so that when people are creating those codes, they can actually contribute codes back to the Hubs Cloud project, and it can be integrated into future iterations of the foundational software, which is kind of interesting. I will say that as interesting as it is, it's really impractical. At least for our purposes, according to Hubs by Mozilla, their site, I tried to look up like the cost breakdown, and it is really complex. It is not written for a layperson. I don't understand what they mean by a lot of the things that they were talking about with the cost. And just from how they're talking about it, it made it seem like it could very quickly add up and become very expensive unless you know how to really like almost game the system and like turn your domains off when you're not using them, or you just have to be having enough events that it's really worthwhile having your own domain. So that was kind of interesting. It was like, if you're a small organization, you're not going to want to spend the money to do this. Like, you need a dedicated IT team to even set this up.
Yeah, you know what? That connects really good with the concept of Google Arts and Culture and the fact that, when people want to create these tours, they want to create these sites, it's time. It's a lot of time. And that's a person. That's a photographer. That's an editor. That's someone to upload. And I feel like just with the Mozilla Hubs, this is a real issue, I think, for smaller organizations. This tech is becoming a big boom. And like you said, the metaverse is becoming such an interesting concept in our society. It's probably going to become bigger, but how do these organizations kind of get in on that?
Yeah, and it's a lot of the reviews of people who are actually using this, they're not coming from people who are using this Hubs Cloud. They're just using the free version. It seems like Hubs Cloud really is meant for tech companies who have a dedicated team of people who can actually understand what the heck these instructions are talking about and like what a stack is.
It's that issue of time that a lot of just new technologies, they take a learning curve to them.
Yeah, they do. They really do. When we're talking about reviews, like I said, it's really the free version, which was the most interesting part to me because I wanted to see, well, are other people having the same experiences? And honestly, most of the reviews of the regular, like free version of Hubs are super positive.
Wow.
People love it. I read this interesting article by Detlef Legrand that was comparing spatial.io to Mozilla Hubs. They both have similar functionality, but Mozilla, according to this reviewer, has better ease of use, better hardware support, better safety as far as privacy, and price compared with spatial.io. I guess like after a while you do have to pay for spatial, but you can choose to just never pay for Hubs. Both of them are catered to very different audiences, with Mozilla Hubs being the more wide use, whereas spatial.io is really just kind of like a brainstorming area. So that was interesting to see where people are like, yeah, I'd use Mozilla Hubs. Like that's pretty cool. It is easy to use and has great hardware support. And I'm like, really?
So your kind of final review is that it's not as easy as people make it out to be.
No, I will get down to my final review, but I did not agree with that at all. And that kept coming up in these reviews. Was like, it's so easy to use. It's so easy to use. And I did not find it easy to use as someone who is not a technology person. But I think that a lot of really what these reviewers were talking about was the fact that you can customize the environments and the avatars on the free version, even through something that's connected to Mozilla Hubs, where you can do the design. But even for that, like, it's hard if you don't actually know how to use that system. You'd have to do the research to figure it out. The other thing that people really like is you don't need VR glasses for Mozilla Hubs to work, which is convenient. And I do agree with that one because it was a VR experience that we were able to do without having a VR headset.
Yeah. So did you do this on a mobile device or desktop?
I just did it on my laptop.
Oh, your laptop.
So I used my laptop. I used the keyboard commands to kind of move in the space because I found that actually using my mouse was harder, which was very strange to me. It would be interesting to see. I never got my Google Cardboard to work well enough to even try with my phone. So it would be interesting on like a real VR headset, how it would interact. They actually recently did an update of the platform to improve their ease of use and functionality on mobile and desktop. That was what most of their users are using to interact with their interface, which is great, except that when I was looking for like videos to like, tutorials or whatever, it's all the old design.
So they need to update those kind of videos.
Yeah. So, we kind of talked about some of these cons with like the private domains. It's a lot of people. You need a lot of time. You need a lot of effort. You need money to set up a private one. For the free version, it's like, oh, it's free, so you take away that money aspect. But I still think that there's a huge time commitment to be able to set up something that would actually work. And then you have to be able to communicate how to utilize the interface to people who have never used it before, which is another like added layer of complexity there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like so many people have different learning styles too, that for some people, a simple video explanation might not be enough, or even an audio explanation. They might actually need to kind of walk through this technology, especially for people that are kind of new to these new technologies. They are overwhelming the first time you get into a Mozilla Hubs room. It is a little overwhelming to add stuff to the room, and to resize it is just very difficult.
It's so weird. When I was placing the objects, I was like throwing them because I couldn't figure out how to rotate them the right direction. And so it looked very like the ratios were very strange. Yeah, so I guess that goes right into my own experience of it. So I kind of looked at the same things that other reviewers were looking at. So ease of use, visual quality, price, and like the overall functionality. I've already said ease of use, horrible. I don't understand how people find this super easy to use. Maybe they have a better background in technology, but maneuvering this in the space is really difficult. You practically need a coding background to create your own designs and avatars. It's not intuitive, and if it's not intuitive, it's not useful. Visual quality was okay. It kind of reminds me of Minecraft in some ways. Some of the designs were very block based. And I was like, it's just like a slightly higher version of Minecraft.
I agree with that. And I would actually be interested to see if someone who used Minecraft, especially with the computer controls, the keyboard controls, would maybe have a more easier time kind of transitioning into the Mozilla Hubs.
Oh yeah, that's actually a really good thought. I didn't think about that. And people who play video games a lot more than I do, is that just something that's easier for them to wrap their heads around? And that kind of goes with the functionality is okay. It seems like, if you know what you're doing, getting a group together on this platform would be fine. There is the issue of limited participants, and apparently the audio can sometimes be buggy. But I mean, as far as serving its purpose, I think it does okay at that, and probably works a lot better if you actually know what you're doing. And then price, it's free. The free version is free, which is great. It's really only an issue if you want to set up a private server. So overall, my bottom line is I just think it's more trouble than it's worth. If we're talking about arts organizations, especially smaller, mid-sized organizations, there's definitely no time or money to create their own domain. And even the free version isn't intuitive enough to easily use and set up. There's a lot of other platforms for social interaction that would be easier to utilize, like Zoom.
Yeah, we've seen more organizations kind of get on board with Zoom. It's nice to see more of these organizations kind of getting on this technology curve. It'll be interesting to see how many more organizations now jump onto Google Arts and Culture, or even try out Mozilla now, this kind of big boom into technology that all of these organizations were forced to become a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there's definitely the potential for it to, in future iterations of both, Google Arts and Culture and Mozilla, to get to the point where they're more worthwhile and they are easier to use and maneuver for people who aren't super well versed in those platforms. But, if we're going to start using them tomorrow, maybe not so much.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that. And I think we've seen, through the pandemic with the Google Arts and Culture and Google Cardboard, more and more kind of big museums are getting on there, and they're getting their tours set up. They're getting VR tours set up. We just saw the National Parks got on there as well. And so I think it is slowly becoming a thing. Now, as how many organizations will actually have the cardboard things there for you to actually go through and explore in person, maybe? I don't know. It's something very interesting to see as we get more back into person and more comfortable with using technology, wearing VR headsets. It'll be interesting, especially even with the Mozilla. That's nice about the Mozilla is that you can kind of use it in a more remote sense. You don't need the VR headset. You can just go to your laptop or your desktop and use it. Whereas the Google Arts and Culture, you do have that upfront cost of under $10 to get the headset, get it to yourself, to even be a part of that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the one thing that I super agreed with is that Mozilla Hubs has that convenience aspect to it. And I mean, even Google Cardboard, it was a really small cost.
It was
to get those. I mean, unless you're, ordering in bulk, that's probably something realistic to do. But yeah, it will be very interesting to see kind of how these morph over the next couple of years. I think this was a great conversation. Thanks so much for sharing about Google Cardboard.
Same with Mozilla Hubs. I feel like I learned so much more about that platform that I really appreciate.
Yeah, definitely. So hopefully the rest of you who are listening learned a little bit today, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Yep. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the AMT Lab podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and to leave a comment. If you would like to learn more, go to amtlab.org. That is amt-lab.org. Or you can email us at amplabcmu@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at Tech in the Arts, or on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn at Arts Management and Technology Lab. You can find the resources that we referenced today in the show notes. Thanks for listening. See you next time.